everyone. My name is Sarah Brown. I am a student of occupational therapy at The Ohio State University. Thank you for listening to this presentation today about expressive writing. A little bit about this. I was able to share the benefits of expressive writing at a lunch and learn through Cancer Support Community Central Ohio as part of my um, graduate experience and getting a doctorate in occupational therapy. I am completing a capstone and experience with cancer support community. So this has been a great area for me to kind of find where the research lies for cancer caregivers and to share this with you all today. So, a little bit of background for cancer survivors. Cancer can greatly affect the mental health of a cancer survivor. The prevalence of depression and anxiety amongst cancer survivors is high. For the cancer survivor caregiver, research suggests that cancer caregivers also experience significantly higher rates of burden, stress, and depression when compared to the general population. So we know that cancer survivors go through a lot of stress from when they receive their diagnosis through the cancer care continuum. And sometimes a cancer caregiver will be abruptly put into that position as well, typically as a spouse or a family member or a very close friend. So, not only is that stressful, but cancer caregivers may also be balancing a full time work schedule, caring for children, and going about their daily routine as well. Some background continued. Over time, depression, anxiety, stress, and burden greatly affects a person's psychological functioning. Research suggests that an implementable and cost effective activity of emotional disclosure can significantly improve psychological functioning. A study by Harvey Knowles et al. Studied the effects of emotional disclosure through the use of expressive writing on cancer caregivers. Now, in this study, they focused specifically on spouse of cancer survivors and the spouse's perceived feelings of caregiver burden, stress, and depression. So at this point in the lunch and learn, I asked the participants their thoughts and if they have experienced this as a cancer caregiver or a cancer survivor. I asked everyone to unmute themselves to share what they felt comfortable with sharing, or feel free to write in the chat box. So at this time, take a moment for yourself and think about your personal experience. So, a bit about emotional disclosure. Emotional disclosure is the disclosure of thoughts and feelings related to a traumatic experience. A form of written emotional disclosure is termed expressive writing. A bit more about expressive writing. Expressive writing involves engaging in written forms of emotional disclosure. Two forms of emotional disclosure are likely expressed through expressive writing. The first is expressive disclosure. This is the acknowledgement and elaboration upon strong emotions surrounding trauma, particularly emotions that have not been previously disclosed. These are typically negative and undesirable emotions. Inhibited emotions are associated with increased stress. So the more we hold in our feelings, the more and more stress we're going to feel, which then also has negative effects, holding on to stress. Expressive disclosure has shown to assist individuals with the confrontation of trauma and assist with the working through of strong and negative emotions and or experiences. So, with expressive disclosure, I like to think about how many times have you sat down when you're feeling sad or angry and started to write out your feelings? Maybe it's directed at a particular person and you think, I'm going to give them this letter because I need to express my emotions in this way. And sometimes maybe most of the time, when you sit down and write it and you kind of sit on it for a while, you find, okay, I worked through that. I'm not going to give this person this note, but wow, do I feel better writing that. And, we kind of toss the paper in the trash and we feel a sense of relief. We feel decreased stress and we feel like we essentially worked through those emotions. The second type is benefit finding. So, this is a form of expression in which an individual is able to recognize perceptions, goals, and emotions without experiencing painful emotions associated with a circumstance or experience. Emotional recognition and understanding of feelings is typically associated with an increase in emotional functioning. So, benefit finding through expressive writing, therefore, accounts for perceived improvements in well being after writing. So, finding the benefit in something, we are working through it, we're recognizing how we're feeling, and it's almost kind of exercise. The more you do it, the better you'll feel, and you're getting to know yourself better. So, at this point in the Lunch and Learn, I ask participants to think about a benefit finding topic, joy. I ask them to think, what brings you joy and how do you experience joy? I also ask participants to think of joy as it relates to the senses. So, what does joy look like? What does joy sound like? What does joy feel like? What does joy smell like? What does joy taste like? A bit about me to give you an idea. Joy is looking at beautiful nature around me, especially my favorite place in Utah. Joy smells like my mom's perfume. They say that scent is one of the strongest indicators of memory, and my mom has never changed her scent. So when I smell Chanel number 5, it immediately brings me joy thinking about my mom. For a lot of people, joy sounds like their loved ones laughing, and I am no exception. We did talk about this in the Lunch and Learn, that sometimes we don't even think what our loved ones are laughing at is funny, but just hearing their laugh makes us laugh, and just love that, and it brings so much joy to us. Again, for most people, I would say joy feels like the strongest hug from the people I love. So, don't we all just love that feeling of being hugged and embraced by people we feel so comfortable with and love so much? And lastly, my coffee loving self loves and experiences joy through the taste of iced coffee on a hot day. I mean, who am I kidding? I love and experience joy through iced coffee even on a cold winter day, but especially on a hot, hot summer day. So at this time, take a few moments, think about joy and joy as it relates to you. At this point in the Lunch and Learn, I had participants break out into breakout rooms and share in small groups what brings them joy, and just open dialogue and brainstorm together. So feel free to pause this video at this time and just sit and think about joy. Okay, at this point in the Lunch and Learn, I ask participants to come back from their breakout rooms and take 5 minutes to reflect alone and write on these 3 concepts. What brings you joy? How do you experience joy? And how do the senses relate to joy? So at this time, if you would like to pause the video and take 5 minutes to put your pen to paper and think about joy as it is specific to you, please do so now. At this point in the Lunch and Learn, after writing down what joy is to them, I ask participants to feel free to share their thoughts and feelings with the group, and to write in the chat box as well. So at this point in the Lunch and Learn, I asked participants, on the flip side of the great feelings of joy, there's also aspects that inhibit us from experiencing joy. So take a few moments to write down what inhibits you from experiencing and feeling joy. Feel free to pause the video to do so. So, how can these barriers be addressed? Think about, what are the things you wish to improve upon to increase your feelings of joy? What are you going to prioritize? So I think this is a very important component to the barriers that inhibit us from experiencing joy. We live in a busy world, and especially being a cancer survivor with added stress and or being a cancer caregiver with those added stressors, um, joy may not be on the top of our radar. You're just kind of getting through day to day. But if you understand that there's an importance there to seeing joy in our everyday life and understanding where your barriers lie, there's an area to prioritize what those things are that facilitate your feelings of joy. So maybe that's creating a morning routine that's just for yourself before you have a very busy day ahead. Making a morning cup of coffee and taking 20 minutes to read maybe the news on your phone, or getting a morning workout in. So just think about where you feel happy and where you feel joy, and really make it a priority to implement that. Also, how will you share your needs with others to increase your feelings of joy? I think a lot of times we don't tell people what we need. We don't tell our loved ones what we need. And if you are open to sharing with people what you need to feel better, and also maybe to be a better caregiver, I think your loved one would be receptive to that and want you to complete those activities or that time for yourself or whatever it may be, to address the area where you're feeling, okay, I know I feel joy in this, but for whatever reason, I'm not experiencing it, and increase those feelings of joy for you. And lastly, have you thought about an action plan to increase your joy? So maybe going back to the workout example, maybe write down in your planner or your phone that I'm going to work out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And by having an idea in your head of your action, you're more likely to follow through with the plan and thus experience more joy. So a little bit more about Harvey Knowles et al. For this study, 64 participants were assigned to either an expressive disclosure group or a benefit finding group, or the control group, which was a time management group. So for the expressive disclosure group, the participants wrote about their thoughts and feelings related to the cancer experience. For the benefit finding group, participants wrote about the positive outcomes of their cancer caregiving experience. And for the time management control group, they simply wrote about recent activities they were doing. So this was not related to the cancer experience at all, either good or negative. It was maybe just something they did that week or planned to do. Findings. Emotional disclosure improves feelings of burden, stress, and depression. Both expressive disclosure and benefit finding reduces caregiver stress. Caregiver burden was significantly lower across all writing groups. Expressive writing for cancer survivors. For individuals with cancer, expressive disclosure carries health benefits for individuals undergoing health-related adversity. There are positive results through the use of emotional expression and processing. In one study, patients at a comprehensive cancer center participated in a weekly writing program. And they completed this program, I believe it was for 7 years. So it was a very long-standing study. And in this study, survivors were open-minded to expressive writing, and they reported changes in the way they viewed their illness following writing. The findings support that single brief writing exercises improve a cancer survivor's perceived quality of life, particularly their physical quality of life. So in this study, they had participants rate their quality of life right after writing, and they immediately felt better. So this just supports like even a brief writing exercise right after, the participants feel better. And that was within all areas. And it was interesting to see that they felt better on a physical level by simply writing about it as well. So, takeaways. It is recommended to find a quiet and private space to complete expressive writing. You may want to write once a week to track feelings, progress, and areas of growth. Or you may want to simply write when you are feeling anxious, sad, or need an outlet to express emotion pertaining to a particular situation or feeling. Expressive writing is you centered and may be completed however you choose. The whole point is just to think about how you're feeling and get it out. Might be pen to paper, might be in the notes section of your phone, might be writing an email to yourself. I think the great thing is just to sit down with yourself, check in with yourself, say, how am I feeling, and just let it flow. Expressive writing is great when you feel like maybe you don't have the right person to talk to. And again, it's that working through feeling. And yeah, you may want to track your feelings over time. So if you're going through something particularly difficult, maybe write every day and see how you're feeling as the days progress. Possibly as the hours progress. It's a good method of checking in with yourself. And the great thing is, it's private to you. You can choose to share it, but right now, as you're going through it, it's private to you. You can work through your emotions. You're not necessarily feeling judged by others or feeling later like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have shared that, or feelings of regret. You can write it down, think about it, kind of like as I talked about earlier, when you're feeling upset with someone and feel like you want to give them maybe something that you wrote to better express how you're feeling, and then you find, maybe I won't give that to them, but at least I feel better. So writing it down allows you to take that pause in time and think about the next movements you're going to take. So lastly, if you're familiar with Cancer Support Community, they had a previous journaling workshop. Participants viewed that highly, so look out for an upcoming Right to Heal journaling workshop at Cancer Support Community Central Ohio to continue your written self-expression experience. Lastly, there's an already established blog format through My Lifeline, and you may set up an account at the following link to connect with friends, family, share, and find support. Now, this is more of a blog setup, so what you write may not be as private as a journal at home, but it could be a good resource if you are looking for something like that. Here are references if you would like to check those out and read the studies for yourself. And lastly, thank you. Thank you for listening to this PowerPoint. And I love finding the benefits of these studies and think that it is easy and implementable to do. And when I discussed it with participants, they seemed open and have prior experience with journaling. So I just would love to see anyone be open to expressive writing and working through difficult times in our life. And lastly, my school email is here, so please feel free to reach out to me with any additional comments or questions.